The hallway smelled like cold metal and alien spice. Ethan Cade, a human engineer from Earth, stepped into the strange silence of the alien vessel. He was expecting a full crew, noise, and at least one familiar face. But instead, the ship felt empty. Almost too quiet. His boots clicked softly on the dark floor as he looked around, noticing sleek, glowing panels and doors that opened without sound. This was not a human ship. "Welcome aboard the Varela," a smooth voice said from behind him. Ethan turned quickly, and there she was, the alien navigator, tall, elegant, with pale lavender skin and dark silver eyes that seemed to shine. She wore a smooth black uniform that hugged her body like it was grown onto her skin. "I'm Commander Ryla," she said with a small smirk. "You're the only other human aboard." He blinked. "Wait, what? I thought this was a joint operation, mixed crew." Her smile widened slightly as she stepped closer. The doors sliding shut behind her. Plans changed. She whispered, "It's just the two of us here." Then she pressed a panel on the wall, and the door behind them hissed and sealed tight. Ethan's heart skipped. "Why lock the door?" he asked, trying to sound calm. "Security," she said. Turning away, "Follow me. I'll show you your station." As they walked, he couldn't help but notice the ship was unusually quiet, no background chatter, no crew footsteps, not even the hum of machinery. "Where's the rest of the team?" he asked. She didn't stop walking, scattered on other missions. "You're lucky. This is an important journey." "Important how?" he wanted to ask, but she turned down a dim hallway before he could speak. She showed him to his room, clean, small, and already prepared. Too prepared. There was a cup of tea waiting on the desk, and photos of Earth's landscapes glowing faintly on the wall. "I didn't bring those," Ethan said, puzzled. "I thought you'd like a warm welcome," Ryla replied with a soft smile. Humans like comfort. Ethan didn't sit. Something about this didn't feel right. "Can I meet the captain?" he asked. "I am the acting captain now," she said, her tone still calm. "You'll report directly to me." He stared at her. "That wasn't in the briefing. There's a lot they don't tell you," she replied, walking toward the door again. "Come. The ship's brain is waiting for you." The control center was unlike anything he'd seen. Instead of screens, the walls pulsed with living lights, and when he stepped close, they responded to his presence. "Touch the interface," Ryla said gently. Standing behind him, he reached out, and the lights shifted to his hand, accepting him instantly. "That's strange," he muttered. "Alien tech usually resists human interaction at first." "Not this ship," she whispered. "This ship was built to accept you." He turned sharply. "What do you mean?" But she only smiled. "You'll learn in time." Later, alone in his cabin, Ethan tried sending a message to Earth Command. No signal. The ship's communications were under maintenance. According to the logs, he tried accessing the crew, manifest locked. The food logs blank. Even the medbay systems showed authorized personnel only. He leaned back in his seat, rubbing his temples. This wasn't just some escort mission. Something was wrong, and no one had told him. Suddenly, his door chimed. He stood up and opened it. Ryla stood there, holding 2 cups, steam rising from both. "I thought we could share a drink," she said, with a look that was both kind and unreadable. "I'm not really thirsty," he replied. Her smile didn't fade, just keeping things warm between crewmates. She walked in without asking, sat on his bed, and placed the cups on his table. He stayed standing, watching her closely. "You know," she said after a long silence, "humans are interesting, so full of suspicion." "And yet you're always curious?" He didn't answer. She picked up her cup and took a sip. "The journey will be long, Ethan. And we have only each other." Her voice dropped lower, more intimate. "Don't waste your time fearing me." He walked to the small window and looked out at the stars. Vast, cold, and silent, just like this ship. Ryla stood up slowly and walked to the door, pausing before she left. Then she looked over her shoulder, her silver eyes catching the low light. "You'll see soon enough why you're here," she said softly. "And when that time comes, I hope you'll choose me." The door slid shut behind her, and for the first time, Ethan felt like he wasn't the guest. He was the experiment. Ethan woke up sweating in the middle of the night, even though the ship's temperature was perfectly controlled. A strange sound had pulled him from sleep, a low clicking noise, like metal tapping against metal. Soft but steady, he sat up in bed and listened. Holding his breath, there it was again. Coming from the hallway outside his cabin, he got up quietly, slipped on his boots, and opened the door just a crack. The hallway was dark. Lights dimmed as they were during night mode, but down the corridor, near the cargo hold, he saw movement, a shadow, slow and graceful, heading toward the navigator's cabin. He followed silently, staying close to the wall, heart thumping louder with every step. Then the shadow stopped, turned, and vanished through the curved door of Ryla's quarters. Ethan waited a moment, then moved closer, his hand brushing against the smooth control panel beside her door. It didn't open. The panel blinked, red access denied. He frowned, tried again. Still locked. That wasn't standard. Cabins on ships were supposed to be open in case of emergencies, and crew doors didn't usually lock from the outside. He noticed something strange on the doorframe. A small security latch, barely visible unless you were looking for it. He leaned closer and realized this door could only be locked or unlocked by someone standing outside the room. Why would she have that? He stepped back quickly as soft footsteps echoed behind him. Ryla appeared from the shadows, holding a black tablet in her hand, her eyes already focused on him. "Curiosity again, engineer?" she asked, her voice calm but cold. "I couldn't sleep," Ethan lied. "Heard a noise." "Did the noise tell you to sneak around my door?" she replied. One brow rising slightly, Ethan shrugged, trying to stay relaxed. "Just seemed odd to me." "The way your cabin is sealed," she smiled thinly and walked right past him, placing her hand on the panel, which turned green instantly. The door slid open, revealing only darkness beyond it. "Do you want to come in?" she asked, without turning around. "See what secrets I'm hiding." Ethan hesitated, then shook his head. "No, I'll head back." "Smart," she whispered, walking inside and letting the door seal shut behind her again. Ethan didn't sleep the rest of the night. The next morning, he went to the engine bay. Working alone, like always, no other crew around, just him and the ship. He plugged into the maintenance logs and checked recent system access. Her name was everywhere. She'd been inside every system: navigation, communication, power routing, even food supply logs. Everything passed through her hands first. Even worse, when he tried to access the mission route, he got a scrambled screen filled with distorted star maps and encrypted code. He stared at the mess for minutes, then forced a hidden diagnostics panel open under the desk. Inside, a small tracking device blinked green. But when he scanned, it wasn't sending any signal back to Earth. Someone had disabled long-range comms and replaced the beacon with a dummy. He was stranded, back in the hallway. He paused outside her door again, this time pressing his ear to the metal. At first, nothing, just silence. Then he heard something, soft and rhythmic, like whispering, not in English, not in any language he recognized, but repeated in a pattern, almost like a chant. He stepped back in alarm, his skin cold. She was talking to someone or something, and he was sure it wasn't on board. Later that evening, she found him in the mess hall, sitting alone with untouched food. She sat down across from him, resting her chin on one hand. "You're very quiet today," she said playfully. "Did my room scare you?" "You keep locking it," Ethan replied. "Makes me wonder if you're protecting something or hiding it." Her smile didn't fade, but her eyes narrowed ever so slightly. "Maybe both," she said softly. "But have you ever thought that you might be the one I'm hiding from?" He didn't answer, just stared at her, watching the way she sipped her drink without breaking eye contact. "Relax," she added. "This ship is my home, and you're my guest, nothing more. But you control everything here," he said quietly. "And I'm starting to wonder if I was brought here for a reason you haven't told me yet." She stood up without warning, leaned across the table, and whispered near his ear, "You're very clever, Ethan, but sometimes clever minds break first." Then she turned and walked away. Leaving her drink half-finished, Ethan looked down at her cup and realized the liquid. Inside was a strange shade of blue, not standard hydration fluid. Whatever she was drinking, it wasn't what the rest of the ship used. That night, he sat at his desk, writing a secret log into a private data stick. He didn't know how long he could keep this up, but one thing was now clear. He wasn't just an engineer on a random mission. He was part of something else, something she controlled, and she had no plans to let him go. The stars outside the window were wrong. Ethan sat in the control chair, staring at the nav screen as cold sweat formed at the back of his neck. He didn't know much about alien star charts, but he knew enough to recognize they weren't where they were supposed to be. The constellations were drifting out of pattern. Slowly and subtly, but definitely, he double-checked the course log. Blinking at the smooth, scrolling numbers, their heading had changed 3 days ago. Quietly, no alerts, no messages, no explanation. The ship had gone off course and no one told him. He tapped into the system to send a correction. But the command refused. Unauthorized. The screen blinked, locked down in place. Only one person had that kind of authority, Ryla. He whispered under his breath. "What are you doing?" He stood up and headed straight to the bridge, trying to stay calm as his heart pounded faster. The doors opened with a soft hiss, and there she was. Leaning back in the pilot's seat, legs crossed, fingers lazily moving across a floating interface. Her silver eyes slid toward him like she already knew what he was about to say. "You noticed?" she said before he spoke. "We're not heading to Vega Outpost," he said, keeping his voice steady. "Why did you change course?" She tilted her head, amused, because Vega is boring. He didn't smile. "We were ordered to resupply there, pick up crew, maybe more cargo. What's going on?" She stood up slowly, walked toward him, her steps light like she was floating. "We're going somewhere better," she whispered. "Somewhere important." Ethan frowned. "Where?" She leaned close, her voice soft as breath. "A place only I know how to reach." He stepped back, tension rising in his chest. "That's not your decision to make. It is now," she said, tapping her finger gently on his chest, "because you and I are the only ones who can go there." That night, Ethan broke into the storage room, using a bypass tool he'd built from spare parts. He needed answers, and he wasn't going to get them by asking politely inside the dark chamber. Rows of supply crates glowed faintly. But something else caught his eye, a container marked Classified Human Only. Sealed tight, he forced the lid open, and inside was a sealed pod empty, but its logs told the story. Another human had been aboard this ship before him, and not long ago. According to the entry log, the pod had opened 12 days ago, just 1 day before Ethan arrived. He felt the chill creep into his skin as he scrolled through the records. No name, no ID, just a code and one word attached: rejected. He backed away and almost bumped into a tall shape in the shadows. Ryla stood at the door, quiet, watching him. "You're getting bold," she said softly. "Are you ready for what you'll find?" Ethan tried to hide his shock. "Who was in this pod before me?" She walked forward and closed the lid gently, her fingers brushing the surface with strange care. "No one important," she whispered. "He wasn't compatible." Ethan stepped closer, his voice low. "Compatible with what?" "With me?" she said, eyes flashing in the dim light. With this ship, with the mission. He stared at her, unable to speak. You were chosen, she continued, walking past him, because you're mine. Your thoughts, they fit the pattern. What pattern? But she didn't answer. The lights around her shifted as she left the room. The door hissing shut behind her. Ethan stood there for a long time, feeling like he had just walked into a trap built years ago. Later, in his cabin, he tried to override the navigation system again. But now it wasn't just locked. It was rewriting itself. The ship was alive, somehow adapting to him, even without his input. The controls pulsed with light whenever he passed by, almost like it recognized him now, almost like it was waiting for him. He looked out the window once more, and for a brief second, he saw something. A shimmer in the stars, a distortion, like ripples on water, forming a shape, then vanishing. That wasn't normal space. He didn't know where they were heading. But it wasn't in any star map he had studied. The door behind him beeped once, then slid open without a request. Ryla stood there, this time wearing a black cloak over her uniform, her eyes glowing faintly. She raised a hand slowly and said only one thing. Come with me, Ethan. You need to see what's ahead. He hesitated, then stepped forward, unsure if he was walking toward the truth or a point of no return. The banging didn't stop. Ethan held his breath as he stood in front of the cargo freezer, the metal door vibrating under his palm. Bang. Bang. It wasn't a sound the ship should make, not from that section. It's not in the middle of deep space. His fingers trembled as he reached for the manual override. He hadn't planned to come here, but the sound had dragged him out of bed. He checked the logs. This freezer was marked as offline and empty. But it clearly wasn't. With one final breath, he pulled the latch, and the cold air exploded outward, thick with frost and silence. The lights flickered inside, and fog poured out onto the floor like a ghost escaping its prison. Then he saw it, a dented cryopod at the back of the chamber. Its surface scraped and smeared. Something had clawed from the inside. He stepped in slowly, eyes locked on the pod, every instinct screaming to turn back. He knelt beside it and wiped the frost from the screen, revealing a name. It wasn't his. L.T. Ren Halliday, a human, someone who had been on this ship before him. Ethan opened the maintenance panel, heart racing, and saw the life support logs active just 2 weeks ago, then forcefully shut down. Ren had been awake, then silenced. Behind him, the freezer door slammed shut. He spun around, but no one was there. Only the fog, crawling back into the corners. Like it had seen too much, he tried the door. It was sealed, locked from the outside. Just like Ryla's room, he pounded on the door, shouted, but only the echo of his own voice answered back. Then, as suddenly as it had closed, the door slid open. Ryla stood outside, calm, her arms crossed, her eyes unreadable. "What are you doing in here?" she asked, like he'd wandered into a broom closet. "There was someone in this pod," he said, stepping forward. "Another human. What happened to him?" She didn't move, only glanced at the cryo unit once, then back at Ethan. "He failed," she said. "The process, ... It didn't accept him." "What process?" he demanded. She stepped into the cold chamber, unaffected by the freezing air. Her fingers brushed across the surface of the pod, tender, almost mournful. "Ren was strong," she whispered. "But he feared me until the end." Ethan backed away slowly, his breath coming in quick bursts. "He died in here, didn't he?" Ryla didn't answer, but her silence said enough. "You killed him," Ethan said, voice shaking. "Or you let the ship do it. This vessel is alive," she said softly. "It knows who belongs and who does not." He turned and walked out of the chamber, heart pounding, the frost still clinging to his sleeves. In the hallway, he gripped the wall, trying to breathe, trying to think. Everything was wrong. He had been lied to. Sent here. Not as a crew member, but as a replacement. Not for a job, but for a test, that night. He watched the ship's internal cameras from a hidden access point. Most of them were disabled, black screens showing static. But one still worked the cargo hold. He saw her Ryla standing before Ren's pod again. Alone, in the dark, her lips moved slowly, as if she were speaking to someone who wasn't there. Or maybe she was. She touched the pod gently, like it still held something sacred. Then she turned toward the camera, and for a second, Ethan could swear she looked directly at him. He shut the feed, heart racing, the next day. She didn't mention the freezer, or the pod, or the fact that he had been locked in. Instead, she invited him to her cabin. He hesitated, but curiosity won again. Inside, it was quiet, warmer than the rest of the ship. Alien symbols glowed on the walls, moving in slow spirals, almost like breathing. She handed him a drink. The same strange blue liquid she always had. I won't lie anymore, she said, sitting across from him. But I won't tell everything either, not yet. He stared at her, trying to decide if she was dangerous or just lost. Why me? He asked finally. Why bring me here? Her smile was sad, almost human, because this ship accepts you, she said. And I don't want to be alone anymore. Ethan left her cabin without touching the drink. He went back to his room and locked the door, not because he didn't trust her, but because now he finally understood Ren had locked himself in too, and it hadn't been enough to save him. Ethan couldn't move. His wrists were bound by soft restraints, warm and smooth like fabric, but he knew they were stronger than steel. He was lying on a table, not in the med bay, but in a room he had never seen before, deep inside the ship. Where the lights were red and pulsing like a heartbeat, he had no idea how he got here. The last thing he remembered was walking into the control room after the ship entered the distortion zone, then darkness. Now he was awake, and she was standing beside him, Ryla, her face calm. Her eyes no longer playful, but serious. Older, almost sorrowful. Don't fight it, she said softly. The restraints are only there to stop you from hurting yourself. Ethan's voice was dry, cracked. What is this? She leaned closer, placing her hand gently on his forehead, and for a moment, he felt something strange, like warmth, but also pressure, as if a second presence was trying to push into his thoughts. You've seen things you weren't supposed to, she whispered. Heard whispers from the ship before you were ready. He pulled against the restraints. Why am I here? What are you doing to me? She looked away, walking around the table slowly, the lights above shifting colors as she moved. This ship is not just metal and wires, she said. It was grown, not built. Grown, the word sat in Ethan's mind. Like a puzzle piece he didn't know where to place, and it responds only to those who are linked to it. She continued, symbiotic, connected. Bonded. He stared at her. You mean? You control it? She shook her head. No, we share it, me and the one who passes the trial. Ethan's breath caught. The trial. Ren failed, didn't he? Ryla stopped, her back to him, her voice almost a whisper. Yes, he died because of you, Ethan said, eyes narrowing. Because this ship rejected him? She turned slowly, her eyes glowing softly. He died because he feared what I am. He said nothing, waiting. I'm not just a navigator, she said. Stepping closer, I was designed, bred by my people to connect with one Minda human mind to pilot through the unknown. Why human? Ethan asked. Because only humans dream, she replied. Only humans imagine beyond logic. He stared at her in disbelief. You abducted me for this. No, she said, gently touching the restraints to release them. I chose you. The cuffs fell away from his wrists, and Ethan sat up slowly, muscles stiff. You have a choice, she said. You can leave there's an escape pod still functioning. I won't stop you. Or, he asked, standing shakily. Or you stay, she said, her voice now quiet and raw. And we connect? To do what? To cross into the beyond, she said, her eyes wide with something like fear or hope. No alien or AI can survive. It not without a human to guide the dreaming path. Ethan took a deep breath, his mind racing. If this is a bond, he said slowly, why didn't you just ask? Her voice cracked a little. Because if you say no, I die too. He looked at her, really looked for the first time. She didn't seem powerful or confident. She looked alone. I found logs from Ren, Ethan said after a moment. He left a message before he died. Her eyes shimmered. But she didn't speak. He said not to trust you. I don't blame him, she whispered. He never saw me as more than a trap. Ethan stood in silence, his thoughts tearing in every direction. She opened her hand, revealing a small, glowing crystal. This will begin the connection, she said. Only if you choose it. He looked at the crystal at her, and then at the window where the stars now twisted like smoke. Something was waiting out there, something no one had seen before. But he wasn't sure if it was wonder or doom. He reached for the crystal, then paused. If I do this, he said quietly, you have to tell me everything, no more games. She nodded. No more lies. His fingers closed around the crystal, warm and pulsing like a tiny heart. The room began to glow, the walls responding instantly to their bond. And for the first time, the ship began to sing. Asterisk, the stars outside the ship stopped blinking. They didn't fade or vanish. They just froze. Ethan stood beside Ryla on the observation deck, staring out into space. But what he saw wasn't space anymore. There were no stars, no planets, no light, only a slow-moving swirl of dark fog. Glittering with red sparks like dying embers, it didn't look like space. It looked like a wound. We're not in normal space anymore, are we? Ethan asked, his voice barely a whisper. No, Ryla replied, her hands resting on the edge of the window. We crossed the edge 10 minutes ago. The Forbidden Zone, Ethan muttered, remembering the name in old training books, always. Marked with warning signs and restricted tags. Is it really forbidden, he asked, or just unknown? She turned her head slowly, her eyes glowing softly in the dim light. It's both, she said. And once we enter the core, nothing outside can reach us. He took a step back. You said there was an escape pod. There was, she replied, but it can't pass through here. No human tech can. Ethan felt the weight of her words settle into his chest like stone. So we're trapped, he said. You brought me to the edge of nowhere, with no way out. I brought you to a beginning, she answered, not an end. The ship trembled under their feet, not like a shake, but like it was shivering. A low hum echoed through the walls, rising and falling like a heartbeat. It's alive, Ethan whispered. It's scared. It's not fear, Ryla said, closing her eyes. It's anticipation. They returned to the control chamber, where the floor glowed beneath their steps and the ceiling curved like the inside of a shell. Ethan stepped up to the central pillar, where the glowing crystal he'd accepted now hovered mid-air. Spinning slowly, it needs you to guide it. Ryla said, standing behind him, you must dream the path. He frowned. I still don't understand that part. Out here, the mind creates motion, she explained. We can't calculate a route. There's no math, no logic, only feeling, only will. He stared at the crystal, remembering the strange warmth in his chest the moment he first touched it. I don't even know what to dream about, he said quietly. Yes, you do, she replied, stepping closer. You've had dreams every night since you boarded. He turned to her, startled. How? Do you know that? Because I saw them, she said. You were already connecting before you agreed. That frightened him more than anything else. He placed his hands on the sides of the pillar. And suddenly the ship responded. The walls darkened. The air became heavy, and his vision blurred. Images flickered through his mindashones. Fire, laughter, pain. His mother's voice, a broken bridge, a shining road stretching through the stars. He stumbled back, gasping. The ship showed me everything. He said, my life, my fears, and now it waits. Ryla said, what will you give it? He didn't answer, just stepped forward again, slower this time, and focused on one thing: survival, not just for him, but for her, for the ship. For whatever future waited beyond this madness, a sudden jolt struck the vessel, throwing them both off their feet. The lights blinked rapidly, alarms sounded, but no words appeared, just sound, as if the ship were screaming. We've reached the core field, Ryla said, picking herself up. This is where Ren failed. Ethan stood, shaking. What do I do? You must calm it, she said, grabbing his arm. You must give it purpose. The ship began to twist, the halls bending, floors rippling like water. Ethan stepped back to the pillar and closed his eyes. He imagined a path, a bridge of light. Through shadow, built from memory and emotion, he pictured the crew he never met, the Earth he missed, the hope he had as a child. And slowly, the ship began to settle. The air cleared. The floor became solid, and outside, the stars began to move again, not normal stars, but colors and lights he had never seen before. He opened his eyes, sweating, breathing hard. You did it, Ryla said softly, her voice trembling. You crossed with me. He turned to her, and for the first time, her expression wasn't strong or teasing. What's vulnerable? I felt you, she whispered. All of you. Ethan couldn't speak, only nodded. Whatever had just happened was bigger than logic, bigger than any mission, and somehow, he knew, the worst part was still coming. The ship was no longer moving. It was floating in something that wasn't space. Not anymore. Outside the windows, colors drifted like slow rivers of light, red and gold and deep violet. The stars were gone, and so was the silence. Now there was a sound, constant and low, like a song made from breath, heartbeat, and memory. Ethan stood alone in the bridge, hands resting on the glowing pillar, feeling its pulse match his own. The ship was inside his thoughts. Now he could feel it watching, waiting, listening to every fear, every hope. And deep in the shadows behind him, Ryla watched too. She had not spoken since they crossed. She had changed just a little, her eyes brighter, her steps slower. Her voice, when she finally used it, softer than before. You survived it, she said finally. He turned to face her, sweat on his brow. Heart still pounding. You knew I would, he said. Unsure if it was true or just something he wanted to believe. No, she replied, walking toward him. I hoped. There was something in her hands, now a folded strip of silver, glowing faintly. It's time you knew the truth, she said, her voice trembling slightly. Ethan didn't move, just waited. You were never just an engineer, she began. You were chosen, genetically screened, psychologically profiled. Memories? Tested for strength? By who? He asked. By your command, she said, her gaze locked with his. By Earth, he felt coldness grip his spine. They knew about this. They sent you here, she said. Not to fix the ship, but to bond with it. He laughed once, bitter and sharp. So I'm not a hero, I'm a lab rat. No, Ryla said, stepping closer. You're the only one who passed. She held out the silver strip to him, and it wrapped around his wrist as if drawn to his skin. The metal melted slightly, forming symbols that pulsed in rhythm with his heartbeat. You're connected now, she said, not just to the ship, but to me. He looked down at the band, felt a warmth rise through his arm, into his chest, his spine, his mind. What happens next? He asked quietly. That depends on you, she said, taking his hand for the first time, The touch was gentle, but he felt it deeper than skin, like her thoughts were brushing his own. He saw flashes of her past, training, isolation, failure after failure. Always being told humans were too weak, too fragile, then the memory of Ren, screaming inside the bond. As he was rejected, and now, Ethan, standing firm in the fire that others had run from. "I don't know how to live like this," he admitted, inside someone else's mind. "You won't have to," she said, her voice soft as a breath, "because I'm in yours too." The ship hummed louder, the lights glowing gold around them. "You can take us anywhere now," she whispered. "There are places no species has ever touched, waiting for someone who can feel the path. Not just follow it." He looked out the window again. No stars, no direction, just endless beauty and endless risk. "I don't trust you completely," he said honestly. She nodded slowly. "That's okay. Don't trust myself either." Then, slowly, she leaned her forehead against his, and the ship responded, energy surging around them like wind. "Though no air moved, you were sent here to bond with me," she whispered. "But now, I want you to stay because you choose to." Ethan closed his eyes, breathed in the strange warmth, and whispered back, "I'm not going anywhere." And with that simple promise, the ship surged forward again into the unknown, guided not by control or fear, but by something new, something only humans could carry: hope.